Hi, everybody. My name is Gregg. Hi. Oh, thank you so much. So my name is Gregg Cassin. I am 66 years old. I tested positive in 1985. It took me a little bit of time to get accustomed to it, to deal with the shame and the stigma and all that horror. And in 1989, I started facilitating groups. And I want to acknowledge, first of all the speakers that spoke. Where's Dr. Hewitt? Dr. Hewitt. When people talk so respectfully about other people's experience, like the older people living with HIV, queer people, it's so powerful to hear such respect. I want to acknowledge the pride flags along the bottom there. I brought the flags and I thought, oh, they may not want those flags up. That's an old trauma of thinking that I am in this outsider as this person, as this queer person, as this gay person. And so I want to acknowledge the amount of love in the room. I want to acknowledge this group here. And I want to say that you guys, as people that will be working with people aging with HIV, you're working with my people. And I just want to say thank you and bless each one of you. You will be a person who interviews someone, or maybe you're the person that comes into their home care or whatever. And I just want to acknowledge this work that people do. So how many people are new to working with people with HIV? Raise your hands now. Thank you. Keep them up nice and high. And just look around the room. How many people have been doing this work for over 10 years? Raise your hands. Working with people with HIV. Oh, I love it. Okay, how many people have been doing this work for over 20 years? Raise your hands. And thank you. And how many people have been doing this work for 30 years plus? Raise your hands and don't be shy. Oh, it's my little posse over there. We're triplets. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Vince. So I'm going to read this little piece. Find my glasses. There is so much. Is this working too? Hello? There's so much around stigma, so I want to read this piece. Our disease is a disease of stigma. Our disease is a disease of homophobia. Our disease is a disease of racism. It's a disease of prejudice and fear and judgment and shame and guilt. And for 40 plus years, stigma has been and remains the gasoline on the fire of this epidemic. My name is Gregg Cassin. I've been positive for over 34 years. I have been moved by many years of attending conferences and spaces about the HIV/AIDS epidemic. And I have come to a realization that every time we gather, we need to create safe and sacred space and healing space for people living with HIV, for them to heal and to reduce their stigma and shame. Every time we come together, we must make a space to normalize and to uplift and honor people in this room living with HIV. We need to make these spaces safe for people to exercise that muscle of coming out, being comfortable with themselves and others. So I want to just invite people to, for the people that have been case managers and worked with this population for a long time, how many people have lost a client to HIV? Raise your hands. And I want to honor, so what I want to do is I want to honor one of the things I do at the retreats all the time with long-term survivors, and we invite others to come to the retreats besides long-term survivors, is we just want to honor what's in the room. How many people have lost over 10 clients to HIV? Raise your hands. Look around the room, folks. How many people have lost over 20 people to HIV? Raise your hands. And now I want to ask people that have been in the field and that are long-term survivors, and I look over to Paul and to Vince. One of the questions that we asked at the retreat is how many people have lost a close friend or a partner to HIV? Raise your hands. How many people have lost more than one partner or more than one close friend? This is for me the most important part of my thing. How many people, and we always ask you this at the retreat, how many people lost their circle of friends in the early days of AIDS? How many people lost the people that you ate Thanksgiving dinner with, that you went on vacation with, and you thought you would grow old with? Raise your hands. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So people that work on the front line with people that are aging with HIV, what a sacred role you have, because you get to fully see people and understand what they have walked through, what they have faced. And what I love to do when I'm dealing with a room full of new people, I love to just think, what is it that we have walked through to be in this room together? What does each person walk through? So I'm going to do a meditation that we do at the retreat, and I'm going to just let you guys follow along. So I'm going to put on that music. The audio-visual stuff is the challenge, okay? I've been around a long time. Is that good? Is that okay? Here we go. Do me a favor. Close your eyes and take the hands of the people on either side of us. That's right, people, just us human beings in the room. It's terrifying. Close your eyes. And for a moment, be the long-term survivor or the older person living with HIV. And hear the words in that space. As they come together, the fear of reconnecting with people that will be new friends that they lose. There's a group of people gathering that are committed to creating community, mutual support, leaving no one behind, opening their hearts and being part of the healing. Bring any shyness or self-doubt as your gift to be offered up. We all walk into this room wanting the same thing, to be seen by another, seen as in felt, heard, understood, held, treasured, and in that being seen, healed. That's the power we have for one another here. We do this work not only for ourselves, but we do this work for everyone in the room. Oh, this is the best part. We hold the hands of the people on either side of us. But we hold the hearts of all the people in this room. We hold the hearts and all that these hearts contain. Unfathomable losses. Overwhelming isolation and stigma, and yet incredible courage and grace and resilience. And now this meditation is for you. If we hold the hearts of everyone in this room, that means your heart must be held too. That as caregivers, as fellow human beings, we need to remember, we don't do it alone. To be our full and whole selves, we need to be seen and heard and understood also. Take a deep breath together. Oh, I know. I'm gonna do like what Vince did. I'm gonna pretend like you were raised in Santa Cruz wearing sandals and eating like falafel sandwiches. Take a nice deep breath. And then, thank you. Give a squeeze to the hands and look around the circle. And do me a favor, stand up for 1 minute and greet some of the people on the other side of the table or at another table. Stand up and greet somebody. Go ahead, say hello, but don't be robbing all my time, okay? I gotta talk. Go ahead. Yes, and you can give them a hug. You can thank the people who did their talks. Hey, Paul. Paul, would you give me my coffee that's on the table there? It's a double cup. Thank you. Okay, how do I do this? How do I move the slides? Thank you.
You just go down.
Oh. Okay. Yay. Okay, you come back. It's a good problem to have, is you want to talk and chat with each other. Thank you so much. So let me give you let me do so my disclosures are I'm not making any money on the side. Here's my learning objectives, which they were kind of confusing when I wrote them, so I'm going to go to the next one. So I am the only person in that program that didn't have letters after their name. So that is not the thing to find out as you're trying to go to sleep the night before your presentation. Everybody was a PhD or an MD. So I called up a friend of mine and he was like, okay, well, you're a long-term survivor, LTS. And I was like, okay. And he said, and you're also a PWA, a person living with AIDS. And I was like, okay. And he said, and then the most letters. You're a queen, K-W-E-E-E-E-E-N. He's like, bitch, that's enough letters for you, okay? So I just want to say, so I started this work in 1989. And in 1989, this is one of my best jokes. In 1989, you know things are tough. The support groups I was going to, one was a former model down in Los Angeles, this woman with like bleach blonde hair that was down to the shoulders and like rolled down, it was just perfect. For the queens, it was perfect. And the other person was an acting instructor from New York. You know you're up Schitt's Creek if the only person that's helping you with a life-threatening illness is an acting coach and a former model. But let me just tell you, for years, the work that I did, intuitively, I just knew that it was incredibly important to bring people together. So when we first started, my very first support group was called the Healing Circle. And we put up signs all over San Francisco. And this was a time when the numbers were that 1 out of 2 gay men in the city of San Francisco was HIV positive. And you were being told that you had a year and a half to live. So you're walking through the streets of San Francisco and you're thinking, is it me or him? Is he gonna be here next year? Is he gonna be here next year? So it was this incredible time of incredible fear and stigma. So the only thing I knew that could be my contribution, especially because when I went to the other support groups, I was like, oh, he should have said this. Oh, he should have said that. I was like, but you can't be that critical. You gotta just do your own group. If you're not gonna complain about the group, just do your own group. So I started a group, we put the signs up around town. 36 people came to the first group. And within about 6 months or like 3 months, 120 people were packed into this yoga studio. And the only thing we did was tell our stories. And then we would do stuff like we would do hands-on, we would do little triads laying on the ground, we'd do meditations and different stuff like that. But everything that we did, I had to look for some kind of research. So I was reading all of the journals of psychoneuroimmunology, and I had a therapist that was coming to the group, and he'd print out something and they'd put it in the binder. So when I was telling people that we were gonna hold hands, that we were gonna touch, people get shy. So then we found that there was a study that was done at, I think, San Francisco General Hospital, where babies that were premature infants would grow to their normal birth rate twice as fast if they were touched, if they were held. So I got to tell all those folks that, and so they're like, okay, now we'll touch each other. So I would always bring in the research and do that. And so in I guess it was just recently in the last couple of years that I started hearing about Dr. Vivek Murthy. How many have heard of Dr. Vivek Murthy? Raise your hands. Oh my God, is he like a saint? He is a saint. If Mother Teresa and a lava lamp and a golden retriever puppy all had a baby, it'd be Dr. Vivek Murthy. And this guy, he's the US Surgeon General, and he is the first that is fearless about using the word love. And one of the posters that I have from him that I have sometimes on Facebook, love is the oldest medicine. So let me just read one of the things that is my favorite. I realize that more powerful than all those medicines that I wrote is the power, the healing power of love. I could never have prescribed that, but the good thing is we don't need an MD or another degree in order to dispense and to share it with the people around us. We all, in that respect, have the ability to be healers for ourselves, for the people around us, and for this world. You don't underestimate just how much the power your love has, that your compassion has to heal the people around you. It's so powerful, this guy. So I got to meet him. So what I felt like is, since the 1980s, I had been doing this work, and I would have friends of mine, all the cool kids were in ACT UP. So I felt like the cool kids were riding the school bus. In the back of the seat of the bus were the kids from ACT UP. I was the nerd, kind of like new agey person. I'm sitting in the front of the bus, and I'm getting like spitballs in the back of my head. I was always, and so they'd be like, oh, they're going to ACT UP meetings. I'm going and leading the healing circle. And I feel like they're saying things like, oh, that's Gregg. I've been doing this since 1989. So I'm basically a one-trick pony. And they're saying like, oh, Gregg, he does touchy-feely stuff. So I get to meet Dr. Vivek Murthy. I get to read his book, and he's saying this. And so I told a girlfriend of mine last night, I was talking on the phone, I said, so I'm gonna tell everybody that I don't have any letters after my name, but I come, I don't, but I come endorsed by the US Surgeon General. And then when I met him, I brought him the poster of me in 1990. We walked in the Pride Parade. It's not the same banner, but that banner over there is 10 years old. It's really dirty. I apologize. If you take a picture in front of it, just go from a distance. And so I meet the US Surgeon General. I bring this picture for him just to be like, hey, there's been people doing this work, this love work. And so I hold him the thing, and his associate said, like, would you like a picture with the US Surgeon General? I said, yes. And I said, I have something to say. And I hold up the book, and I say, for the last 30 years, people have said to me, Gregg does touchy-feely work. I said, now, I hold up your book, and I say, actually, it's science, bitch. And he's very, very, very calm and very sweet guy, and he went, oh, and then he goes, I love that. He was so precious. So I want to, I just acknowledge that work, and I just think he is amazing. I forget what I tap. What should I tap? Oh, where the hell did that thing go? Oh, there it is. Thank you. Okay, so that's the big the march that we did in 1990. So when we did that work, it was so scary to do that because it was at a time when so many people were dying, and I didn't want the message. You know how like the message might be like, "Oh, you're not doing it right if you're not living, if you're not surviving." But we wanted, so I was so afraid. The group came up with the idea of marching in pride. I was terrified to march with pride because I didn't want anyone to feel judged or anyone to feel like we're doing it wrong. I just knew that our community needed to be together in the space of love. And so we went and did it, and they got wonderful applause, and it was really, really sweet. This is one of the flyers from the retreats that we do. And I want to read that part. We learned in the earliest days of the epidemic that the greatest strength that we have is one another. Facing HIV by joining together as a community, sharing our stories, bearing witness with one another, being inspired by each other's courage and resilience is profoundly healing. So many challenges of HIV can lead to isolation and loneliness and grief or shame, but we can change that through the power of coming together. By joining, we not only have the opportunity to heal ourselves, but the opportunity to heal one another. We make a difference by joining together and listening, sharing our stories. And one of the things I want to say for Dr. Is it Hua? Is that the proper? There's so much. Oh, this is it. So in the retreats, for years, I never understood why someone could share a story of so much heartbreak and so much suffering, but have it feel so uplifting and so healing. And it was done, I got help through this one researcher, and he, in his own mind, flipped the switch, and he said, it's important for us not only to see what long-term survivors and all the deficits, he said, even if it's less than 50%, we have to find what is the resilience, what is unique about this group of people, what is powerful about it. So when we are at the retreats, what I recognize that these incredible tales of woe and heartbreak, and for so many people, like this sense of shame that their lives had fallen apart as long-term survivors dealing it, and that we got to, at the retreats, to express to people and to shine the spotlight back on them and say, yours is not just a story of brokenness and of goals unachieved. Yours is a story of incredible resilience and courage. You have walked through all of this. And for many of us as long-term survivors, we walk through it alone. So many of us became so isolated because of going on disability. I was on disability for like 14 or something years. And every day I prayed, like, please let me go back to work. Don't let me die on disability. Don't let me die on disability. So the power of finding one another and building that community. So when Vince was working with the team, starting 50 Plus at the AIDS Foundation, I was starting my program, Honoring Our Experience. There was another group that was starting of long-term survivors. It was kind of like the idea that time had come. And so how many people have you ever heard of the book called, the movie called We Were Here? Anybody seen this movie? I know, okay, it's the team over here. We gotta get that goddamn movie out. So the We Were Here was a long-term survivor movie, a documentary of people telling their stories of surviving the AIDS epidemic in San Francisco. It was such a powerful movie, and it was, I think, maybe 2012 or 2011, something that it came out, and I saw that movie. I'd been on disability for all this time, and I thought, oh, there's my people, there's my work. So I started writing up the program of honoring our experience, and this buddy of mine helped me present it, and we ran around to all these different places, and they were like, don't call us, we'll call you. And then finally we realized that we knew the queen that owned the retreat center. So we were like, let's just go to the guy that owns the retreat center. And so we went to him, and that's how we started our first retreat. And I guess I want to go to, I'll go back to starting, when we started the program. So it was in 2014, go ahead. 2013. So we started meeting with people from the AIDS Foundation who would talk about what is the long-term, thank you. Does that mean to go or 10 more minutes? Okay. So we started meeting around doing the long-term survivor program at the AIDS Foundation. I started working with a few of my friends to start the program called Honoring Our Experience. There was a couple of other long-term survivor groups that started. So we started with the very first thing we did was we had a big room rented at the LGBT Center, and we invited people to come to this night about long-term survivors. And we had 200 people come into that room, and literally, I heard more than once people say, "You're still alive," and run across the room and hug one another. We had one guy that we heard had come in, was completely overwhelmed, and left and went and sat in his car and just wept the evening, and he came back for the end when we were doing the closing to get more information and stuff. It was incredibly powerful. So the work of, if there is work that you can do, of bringing people together and of having people, the way that Dr. Who had talked about, like where people get to share their stories, to share who they are. Is there anybody here that is like has a program for long-term survivors or HIV aging at the agency that they work at? Anybody have that? Okay, then this is perfect. So then what I said in the very beginning is absolutely true. That is completely you and your contact and the way that you hold and honor somebody, the way that you honor their story, the insights that you have of the needs that they have, the fears that they have, the challenges with isolation and with loneliness, the challenges with self-esteem. I'll never forget the conversation I had with a buddy of mine, Luis, who had come from seeing his doctor, and he was this guy that was this big fancy model, and he was just incredibly gorgeous. And he was just covered with KS lesions. And he was covered in the inside of his mouth with KS lesions. And he called me up one day, and I'm just sitting there on the phone, talking the old style, holding it and talking to him. And he's just kept speaking about, I couldn't believe how kind the people were in the office with me. I couldn't believe the way she held my hand when I said I was afraid. And I'm just there like weeping and holding the phone away from my mouth. And I was like, oh my God, if every doctor, if every case manager, if every social worker knew what it meant to feel like you were seen and heard and respected and honored, and that everything that you were walking through is this I like to remind myself that you're becoming the person you were born to be by all of these challenges that you walk through, all these things that you walk through. I want to go to, don't trick me. Okay, here. So this is some of the groups. I want to say something about diversity. So diversity, the challenge of a program with diversity is that all of the goddamn funding is siloed. Funding is siloed. Oh, this is for the women. This is for young gay men of color. Now there's meaning for all the silos, and it's special to put spotlights on different communities of people. But that group looks like that because we did the hard work. I went and sat in the room with the trans group they were starting. How many people here know Miss Billy Cooper? Oh my God. Okay, so this black trans woman, who every time we're in the same room, I'm wrestling the microphone out of her hand because she's like, you're not gonna quiet a black trans woman with HIV in front of all these people, are you, Gregg? I'm like, this really good. I went to her trans group for weeks and weeks and weeks before one person would feel like they could trust being in that room with all the non-trans people. And I want to say the first comment that I got was a woman that came up to me and she said, Gregg, I have something to share with you. I thought people were mocking me. I said, what do you mean? It was Stephanie. I said, what do you mean, Stephanie? And she goes, I have never been in a room filled with people that aren't trans and be seen and treated with such respect. I thought I was being mocked. So that is the power. One of the things I'm the proudest of is that we have brought together, so we've not only brought together people of color, you know, the non-people of color, those white folks, straight folks, queer folks. We've brought together HIV negative folks who lived through the early days of the epidemic because they're the ones that were sitting on the outside of the circle and everybody else was getting the love and support. So we bring together this incredible, it's beautiful. I love it, Gregg, you're doing good work. I do. Let me go. This is one of the groups that we did. We went to work on a quilt panel because so many of us, we didn't have time to be making a quilt for someone that was dying because everybody was dying. So many people were dying. So to have this time to like live our lives and all of a sudden feeling like, okay, the dust is settled, we can start recreating our lives again. And that's the work we do. We bring this. It's one of our friends we just lost. Oh. That's us and our friends. We decided that this buddy of mine came out to be a long-term survivor in the black wig, and he said, next year at Pride, it will be the 20-year anniversary of when we walked with the Love Heals banner. And I'm like, really? And he goes, I'm gonna go get myself a goddamn wig and we're gonna do it again for the 25th anniversary. And we made the banner. It's that one over there. I got it for free 10 years later. It looks like hell, but it still does the job. And so we got that, and so we redid that, and then next year will be the 30th anniversary. And I want to go to, okay, here's some of the results of, it's like your studies, Paul, of the event gave you a deeper sense of connection and feeling and community and all these things. It's like, it's so powerful. So I want to say, there is no greater antidote for stigma than community, than people coming together. And when we see that there's someone who we love and respect that's also positive, that also has walked through some of the same stuff, everybody feels different. Everybody feels that incredible sense of freedom. And I'm going to tell really quick my story, which, Paul, don't you mock me. But the first meeting I ever went to was the lady that was the acting coach. It was like in the mid-'80s. And I go to this acting coach and she has this workshop. She goes, we're all gonna take turns telling our stories. And I'm like, okay, 5 minutes. God bless you. And so I sit there, I'm in the front row, I got my sharpened 90, number 2 pencil, and I want to learn how to survive HIV. And she goes, each one is going to take their turn and tell their story. I'm like, okay, what the hell is that going to do? Each one gets up. Now, this is from the day when I'm walking through the Castro, and all I can think of when someone cruises me is, if you only knew, my body could kill you. I felt so diseased, so broken, so wrong. And I go to this workshop. Each person stands up. The first guy that tells his story, I'm like, I love that guy. The next person stands up and tells the story. I love that guy. And it goes on and on. And I realized by the middle of the day, I love all these guys. They're all so beautiful. They're innocent. You must be too. And that was how I was healed by a community of peers. A community of peers lifted me and helped me to see my grace, my courage, my resilience, my innocence. So I want to give the microphone to Paul and to Vince to just say a few words because they came on the retreat, and so I'm so grateful that they were there. So please, come over. Actually, come up. You guys come up. Oh, the look on his face, he's like, okay, Mitch, I thought this was your turn.
35 years, come on.
Everybody say hi, Paul.
So I'm going to give you, this is one of two people who saved my life about 35 years ago. I was in a really bad space. I was just starting to get into recovery. I didn't like myself. I was at the lowest I had been ever in my life. And I was going into treatment, and one of the requirements of being in the program I was in was that you either had to work 20 hours a week or you had to volunteer or something. And I heard about this new age, earth-hugging, tree-hugging place next to the Castro Country Club that was opening up, and they were looking for volunteers. I did not know that it was as his assistant. And I went in to interview, and I was telling him how broken I felt and how I was morally bankrupt and crushed. And he took my hands in his and he looked at me and he said, "Do you know those cracks in your heart that you're talking about?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, that's what lets the light shine through." It changed my life. And then I went on the first retreat. That was amazing. It was nothing. It was the progenitor for the Ordinary Experience retreats. This was a healing circle retreat, which is a little different, a little less structured than what you have now. And it was just a bunch of HIV positive people. He had just met David. You had just met David because Brianna, his now daughter, but then she was 9, came on the retreat. And it was the most fun I had ever had with a bunch of people around HIV and this grief we were all carrying. And one of the things we did was the No Talent Show, KNOW, talent. And everybody had to participate. And you had to do it with whatever you could find inside wherever the retreat was. I don't think it was Saratoga Springs. I don't remember.
I don't remember.
So we all, 3 of us got together. We put bathrobes on backwards. Do you remember this?
You have to go quicker.
Okay. And we took garbage can bags, those big ones, blew them up, tied them to our hair as hair, and we were the Supremes. It was fun. It was uplifting. It was a sense of community I've never had before. And it lasted for, I made connections there that lasted for a lifetime of people I had just met. And again, this was 35 years and we haven't killed each other.
Thank you so much, honey. Listen, Vince. Thank you, honey. Thank you.
So I have been involved in the HIV response since 1985. And most of my work has been with the AIDS and under community. And then I left and I was doing international work for a while. And I moved back to San Francisco in 2013 because I couldn't get the healthcare that I needed abroad. And so I met Gregg, and he welcomed me and he showed me a picture. I thought, "Oh, who's that?" And it was me. And I was like, I didn't recognize myself. I was young, and someone was hugging me. And then we did these things. And it was actually 400 people that showed up at the first time that we did this. And what Gregg doesn't talk about is he started this healing circle, and that became the mode of support across the country and around the world, because somebody went to one in San Francisco. I was living in New York. They started a healing circle. And so anyway, Gregg and I were talking, And I did not want to do HIV and aging work. When I moved back to San Francisco instead, I said, that's the one thing I'm not going to do. I've done this now for a long time. I can't, I don't want to hear anything about community. I don't want anything about an L, a G, a B, a T, anything. I'm done. And, but there were other plans. So the morning of the first retreat, I realized I couldn't afford to pay because I wasn't working. And so I called Gregg, and Gregg goes, this is where you write a letter and you tell him, this is what I need, can you help me? I wrote a letter. Within 5 minutes, I got a response that I could come. I got a ride. It was snowing up at the retreat. And people in California can't drive in the rain. And at one point, the driver said, we're gonna have to pull over in the road. Luckily, it was an RV, so we may not be able to go through. But we pushed through, we got there, and I got there just in time for the opening ceremony. And I remember walking in to the lodge and feeling like every person I've ever lost, and there's been a lot, was with me in that room. And we went through the whole weekend, and I realized afterwards that when my story is told, there will be the time before honoring our experience and the time after. Because nobody ever told me that what we went through was honorable. I remember going through, Shanti has a training model that's been around for like 30, maybe 40 years. And I remember doing it a few years ago, and it was the exact same training I'd always been to. The one thing that was different was they said, what happens if you survive? It was just assumed that we would all be dead. And so, when COVID came, it was traumatic, it was triggering, but it became a time to reframe. I was like, I cannot believe. Nobody ever thought we would go through anything similar again, but we did. And it became a time to reframe. It became a time, we need better stories. It can't just be that we got this disease, we lost all our friends, and that was it. So when COVID came, it's like, we did. We need better stories, we need to do this. And so I just want to thank Gregg, because he was one, he's been doing this for a long time. I don't really think you ever get the acknowledgement that you really deserve. But I do believe, I make this a requirement for my staff. Because one of the other things that people, long-term survivors are going through is their doctors, the people, their social workers, their case managers who've been through them are retiring. And so just to have someone to hear the story that you weren't the only one that went through this has been just incredibly, and it's been incredible. And that's one of the things that this has done. And so, that's it. There was before honoring our experience and there was after. And that to me, has been, and I do realize that, before we had, I wish that curing HIV was just as easy as taking the pill. But there's all these other things that we've talked about this morning that are just as important. If you're familiar with geriatrics, there's something, the 5 M's or 4 M's, whatever M's, the thing that matters most is the thing that matters most. And that's what you need to identify with your clients. So thank you, Gregg.
Thank you. So with that, I'll say goodbye, and I want to just say it again. You have such an incredibly important role in being a point of contact for someone who is aging with HIV or a long-term survivor. Such an important role. And I just personally thank you for taking care of our community and being the people that are going to be there and giving them the love and support and guidance that they need. Thank you so much.
All right.